favorite Grasslands PR team. This week we're back with another reason why these overlooked and underappreciated ecosystems are objectively the best biome. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Nicole. And today we are talking about something that might be a little bit sad, but it's interesting. Oh, and no. I just need you to kind of hang in there and just come along for the ride. We're going to talk about...
Oh, no.
We're going to talk about extinct animals of Africa.
Oh, no! Nicole! I was just before we were recording telling you about how depressed I got earlier reading about the Serengeti's history.
I know, it was so hard not to say anything.
Oh, I'm already crying. This is gonna be bad.
No.
Okay, let's go. I'm ready. Oh, okay.
No. We'll start in the way back, and then we'll slowly work our way up to the present day, and talk about some conservation and, some good stuff, too. So, it's gonna be a good one, I think.
I believe you.
I hope. I hope it's not too depressing. But yeah.
Well, take it away, Nicole.
Thanks. Did you want to do news?
Oh, right. That. Oh, you threw me off guard so much with the
I'm
topic
so sorry.
reveal. Yeah, we just wanted to point out that we do have a newsletter you can sign up for at our website, grasslandgroupies.org. We try to put stuff out every week, including news, events, and more. So not just promotional stuff for the things like podcast episodes we're putting out, but, actual news about stuff happening in grasslands and new research being published and all those fun things that we can find about grassland conservation and science. And we have another episode review, so thank you so much for the 5 stars on Parrots of the Plains. You guys are making us so happy, and we just love you. So thanks for that. It made our day.
It's true. Literally every time we get, a new subscriber or a new review, we, text each other, and we're like, hee 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 hee. It's great.
Literally like that, yeah.
Okay. Are you ready
to
dive into the...
Yeah.
Just relax. Deep breaths.
Ooh-ba. Ooh-ba. Like the machine in Star Wars, that coaches Padme on giving birth. Anyway, let's talk about extinct African animals.
Okay. So I'm focusing mostly on the megafauna of Africa. And a lot of the megafauna of Africa is gone. They're extinct. But we do also have a lot that are still living, which is a really interesting and unique thing about Africa. So I just kind of wanted to go way back in the past, but also, like I said, on into kind of some more recent extinctions, as well as, things that we can do for the future. So,
awesome.
Just so everyone's on the same page, what is a megafauna? It literally is just a big animal. Mega, big, fauna, animal. It's a big animal. That's it. Sometimes paleontologists can be kind of nitty-gritty with the, what exactly a megafauna is, but ultimately it's a big animal. And in pretty much anywhere but Africa, most megafauna are gone. They're long, long gone. And in a lot of places, like in North America, the reason for them to be gone is primarily due to climate change, but also human intervention. So humans saw these, giant mammoths. They're like, wow, that's a lot of food. Gonna kill that thing. Gonna eat it all up. Yum, yum. And that did happen in Africa. But there's actually this really interesting paper that I was reading. It was in this magazine Science by Faith Rowan and a few other people. Sorry, I didn't write it down. I just put et al. I'm so sorry. And, they were looking at ancient hominin impacts on African mega herbivores, is how they described them. Because they were specifically looking at, the megafauna that ate plants. And they found that, at least for Africa, it was mostly changes in climate that led to the megafauna extinctions, which is really interesting. Like I said, a lot of other megafaunas had a huge human impact to their fall, but the megafauna in Africa started disappearing about 4.5 million years ago, which was a period in time where there were no, hominid species in Africa. And they found, by looking at all sorts of weird science stuff that I didn't really understand because I am not that kind of a science nerd, they looked at the teeth of ancient fossils and the soil layers and all that fun stuff, and they found that there was less carbon dioxide in the air, which in turn meant that there was a change from tree-covered landscapes to actually what we see now of modern grass-dominated savannas. So the grasses expanded and killed all the megafaunas.
Oh my gosh, Nicole, this is gonna be good. Oh wow.
Isn't that fun?
That's so fun.
I love that.
And that's just for the mega herbivores in Africa, right?
Yes, but a lot of times, if you lose all your mega herbivores, then you're also going to lose all of your large carnivores as well, because now they don't have anything to eat. So
sure,
it kind of all goes in hand. I just thought it was, grasslands are the best. We all know it's true. But the grasslands taking over this, huge continent ended up with a huge decline in ancient megafauna, which included ancient rhinos, elephants, hippos, and some other things. So, I don't know. That is really fascinating.
So fascinating. Yeah.
Cool. And real quick, just because I want to touch on this before I forget, but, why is it that megafauna in Africa have survived for the most part? Why do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Why have megafauna in Africa survived? Because it's been harder for outside influences to get into the continent and disrupt things.
Yeah.
It's gonna be one guess. I don't know. I don't know. I'm realizing now that I know nothing about the paleontological history of Africa.
Yeah.
And so, apart from, the hominid emergence in the Serengeti region, that's pretty much all I ever hear discussed in terms of paleontology and archaeology in Africa. So I don't even know what these animals are or why some of the animals survived until now.
Hey, well, I'm so glad you're here to learn some stuffs.
Me too.
So, from my research, and then, of course, I am not an expert on this at all. For the most part, I don't know a whole lot about, ancient cultures, ancient peoples, ancient animals. I know some dinosaur facts. I know some dinosaur names, but that is pretty much it. But from my research, I've seen that resistance to climate change is a huge one for why the megafauna survived that are still in Africa. And I saw one paper that kind of thought that maybe, all of these animals that did survive, they ended up evolving alongside humans and early hominids, which led to a natural aversion, which saved them from the fates of their brethren, in the Americas, who just got wiped out by humans as they, moved on. Which I thought was a really interesting hypothesis.
That is such a good hypothesis. Ooh. You're just listening to the sound of my brain exploding over and over again. Please continue.
I'm so glad that I could be here to witness that. But yeah, I don't know. I thought that was really, really interesting. And I think that is, sure, why not? That makes sense. These animals, know that humans have an ability to kill them. So they're like, hey, gonna go over here now.
Right. Oh my god, that's so cool. Please, don't stop.
Okay. Well, that's all I had for that.
What? Okay.
It's one of those questions that we don't really have an answer to right now. Is, why did the megafauna survive in Africa when they didn't survive in other places? And I think that, resistance to climate change and then, evolving alongside humans are two very, very, very good hypotheses. But ultimately, we don't know, and we might never know. Right. And that's part of science, is not knowing the answer, so that's okay.
And that's what makes science fun.
So I just kind of picked some of my favorite megafauna, some of the ones that I thought were interesting, as well as some of the ones that are kind of good examples that I think people should know about. And the first one is Dinotherium. Do you know who that is?
Isn't it kind of a Tasmanian tiger looking dude?
No. Good try, though.
No, I don't know what that is.
So Dinotherium was a genus of megafauna, again, big animal, that was the precursor to modern elephants, as well as mammoths that eventually, evolved in North America.
Okay.
So they existed about 9.5 million years ago in Africa, and other species of this genus also existed in Europe as recently as 3.5 million years ago. This is one of the ones that climate change probably had a big impact on its downfall, but we don't quite know what ultimately led to their extinction. And these guys were really interesting. They're a little bit larger than modern-day elephants. They're about 12 to 13 feet tall at the shoulder, versus modern African elephants are about 10, maybe 11 feet tall. So, a couple feet taller, plus a nice big chonky head up there. And they had super, super, super small ears, unlike most modern-day elephants. And they had really long tusks and a trunk, like modern-day elephants. What is interesting about their tusks is that they actually curved downwards, and they are the lower jaw incisors, so the teeth right in front, versus modern-day elephants, their tusks come from the upper jaw and curve upwards.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so some weird adaptations that, led to kind of upside down tusks, or I guess modern elephants have upside down tusks. And people have been so interested by this guy and trying to figure out, why did their tusks curve downwards, whereas modern, elephants curve upwards. And one of my favorite hypotheses, which I highly doubt is any kind of true, but these guys were so large that for a while, scientists thought that they lived in the water, because there's no way that something so large could be on land. And there's a lot of ancient dinosaurs where we also thought of this, but we now know it's not true. And they thought that these, ancient elephants would sit in the water and use their tusks to, prop their heads up out of the water so that they could breathe.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I know, it's so good. But, there's no way that they would evolve tusks facing downwards just so they could hold their head up.
No,
so
absolutely
who knows?
Not. I mean, it could be a nice benefit, perhaps, but...
Yes. So we think that maybe they use them to kind of root around, dig for food, maybe in mating displays, and, modern-day elephants do a lot of those same things, so why not Dinotherium as well?
For the record, when you say these guys were probably affected by climate change, you're talking about, the climate shift that moved the forested biome toward a more grassland biome in this region?
Yes.
Okay.
That, and also just because 9.5 million years ago was the end of the last ice age as well.
Right.
So, and these guys existed. Dinotherium as a genus existed from 9.5 million years ago to 3.5 million years ago. So they had a really long span of time where they were slowly declining, and maybe some species died out while other species did fine. So it's a little bit hard to talk about them as a full group and exactly, what led to their extinction.
Yeah.
We'll get closer to dates that make more sense, I promise.
Hey.
In fact, we're going to jump way, way up in the timeline, and we're going to talk about voyes. Do you know what those are? They're a genus of animal.
No.
Okay.
Should I?
No, I didn't know what they were. So that's
okay.
why I picked them. No one's ever told me that, there were these giant crocodiles that used to live on Madagascar.
Oh.
These are the Voyes crocodilians. They were a genus of crocodiles that grew up to 5 meters long. That's 16 feet. The modern saltwater crocodile can get close to that length, but not very often. And really, since we're talking about something that died about 2,000 years ago, and we don't have that many fossils left of these guys, it's kind of hard to say for sure, maybe the 16-foot long one, maybe it was only, 15 years old and it still had a lot of growing left to do. We have no idea. So I like to believe that they get way bigger, but there's no science to back that up. So, take it with a grain of salt. And these guys, like I said, they lived on Madagascar. And Madagascar at this time had a ton of really large, weird animals on it, including elephant birds. And as, all of these giant animals were wiped out, do you want to guess what wiped them out?
Elephant birds.
No, they ate the elephant birds.
Oh no! Was it the voyeurs?
The voyeurs
ate the elephant birds.
No. The voyeurs ate the elephant birds, but it was a good relationship. It was just like any other predator-prey relationship.
Homeostasis. Yeah.
Yes. Until humans came in.
It's always humans. I always forget about the humans.
I know. So their decline very, very strongly relates to colonists arriving on the island and basically just eradicating all of the giant animals, all of the megafaunas that existed there. No. So again, these guys went extinct about 2,000 years ago. So quite a bit more recent versus, 3.5 million years ago with the Dinotherium.
There's a single tear just crawling its way down my cheek.
Oh no.
Rip voyeur and elephant birds.
I know. Elephant birds are so cool. I love them. My last one. Well, not the last one. I lied. The next one that I want to talk about is the Atlas bear. It's in the name. It's a bear. It's dead now. They used to live in the Atlas Mountains, and they would often come down to the grasslands and kind of move along the mountainside. And the Atlas Mountains, if you're not aware, is kind of the northern edge of Africa through Morocco and Algeria. And the Atlas bear, once again, likely went extinct due to human contact and in kind of encroachment on their territory, as well as a super huge push on hunting and collecting them for sport. So if you've ever seen, especially like movies and old, pictures and drawings of, gladiators fighting bears, those bears were probably Atlas bears.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, Atlas bears from Africa.
Oh my god, I thought we were talking about, like, the same time period, and my brain just had to reshift and readjust its focus to take in the fact that an entirely different kind of bear existed and made its way into our history without us knowing about it somehow. Us as in you and me.
Yeah. No, gladiators, like a while back.
Like in Rome.
Yes. The last Atlas bear was reported, and it was killed by hunters in 1870. So this is getting closer to modern day times.
How big was this bear?
I don't know. Let me Google it real quick.
Also, tangentially, are modern bears, like black bears, at least the ones that I'm familiar with, I guess, in North America, like, are the ones I'm thinking of, like, are bears that size considered megafauna or no?
It depends on your definition. So again, archaeologists love them. They're so smart. They're amazing. But they can be kind of particular about what you call a megafauna. But then other people are like, if it's a big animal, it's a megafauna. So, and when you're talking about, the great megafaunal extinction, usually that is referencing the last ice age. And as climate changed, we had, a ton of big animals go extinct. But there are, like I said, a lot of modern day megafauna, mostly in Africa.
Yeah.
But yeah. The Atlas bear was about 1,000 pounds, 9 feet long. Adult grizzly bears are 6.5 feet long, 600 pounds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that's an adult male, like a big boy. Is going to be about 600 pounds.
Oh, man.
So these guys were, significantly bigger than the modern bears that we have now.
And, like, it existed during, I don't know, recorded history. So
yes.
Do we know anything about its ecology, or is it just, like, gladiator tales that we have?
I think it's mostly gladiator tales, honestly. I was trying to find out some more information about them, and it's not easy to do.
No ecology, just like, wow, that's a big bear.
That's a big bear. I mean, I'm sure if you, like, dove into it.
It just seems like such a waste of, like, our human resources that we're having to decipher this now through archaeological and paleontological means when people could have just written it down for us,
right?
you know? Come on, people. Some of you could write.
Yeah.
A lot of you could write, or at least pass down oral traditions. Like, come on.
No, yeah, like, the Wikipedia, not that, you know, I only use Wikipedia or anything, but the Wikipedia article is, like, 2 paragraphs. Like, it's super small. And even when you go on to, you know, more in-depth websites that have, you know, actual scientific literature cited in their sources, it's mostly talking about, you know, the Roman Empire and how, oh, these are the bears that you saw in gladiator rings, which is a really interesting fact, but it's like, okay.
I want more.
Right? Yeah. I think that they were mostly considered herbivorous.
Okay.
But I could be wrong.
I mean, that would be kind of true of, like, modern bears, too. Like, they're very herbivorous.
I mean,
apart
they're
from
pretty omnivorous.
I mean, yeah. Wait, did you mean, like, they just were strictly herbivores?
Yeah, like...
Oh.
Yeah, like they... Okay.
My brain interpreted they're pretty herbivorous as they're omnivores that tend to eat more vegetable matter than other things for some reason. It didn't occur to me that a bear could... Never mind. Never mind. That was dumb.
No, you're fine. I think, in general, bears eat a lot more plant matter and berries and you know, all sorts of things that people don't realize. Like, they think of a bear and they're like, oh, it's a flesh-eating machine. But in general, bears actually do eat a lot of other things.
But the Atlas bear could have been different.
Yeah, and I think that that's true, that, you know, people think that it wasn't as carnivorous as modern-day bears, which are admittedly less carnivorous than the average person thinks. Just to make it nice and confusing for you guys. But yeah, Atlas bears. Super cool. 1870. So there's another one. There's one more extinct. Well, I lied. I'm sorry.
You keep
There's
doing
one of
that.
2. There's, in this section, there's one more extinct animal that I want to talk about. This one went extinct in 2011.
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
The northern... Wait. No.
It was declared extinct in 2011. The last confirmed sighting was in 2003.
Declared extinct in the wild?
Extinct.
Just straight extinct.
Yes.
Oh, I should definitely know this, but I don't.
That's okay. It's a western black rhino.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And these guys, periodically, every couple years, there will be another kind of flurry of information about them and people being like, oh, wow, the rhino's extinct. But yeah, they were declared extinct in 2011. The last confirmed one was seen in 2003. And so the IUCN Red List, which is kind of the end-all be-all for is it extinct, how endangered is it, that kind of information, you know, they will wait 5 years just in case to kind of like see if maybe another one's found. So they proposed it as extinct in 2006. And then again, you know, 5 years later, they were like, okay, it's definitely gone. And these guys, their decline is very, very strongly correlated to overhunting in Africa. And then once there were, you know, protections in place, poaching became a huge issue for these guys.
Yeah.
So most of our other rhino species are very, very much critically endangered. And there are other subspecies of black rhino that are still doing okay. A lot of rhinos in Africa are actually collared and, you know, very closely protected because there are so few of them left in the wild. And, you know, the measures that people go to try to keep these guys safe is actually pretty impressive. And honestly, I'd kind of like an episode just on rhinos because they do have a really interesting conservation story.
You know, it's hard with an animal that is so recognized like the rhino is to really remember all of these different species designations. And I feel like, with this northern white rhino subspecies extinction that we've seen, some people, I feel like, see those headlines, realize the entire species isn't extinct, it's just like one little offshoot of it, and then they kind of feel like they've been baited and lied to and that it wasn't actually a big deal.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's an interesting point and maybe an interesting discussion to have too about like, well, these might be subspecies. Why is that still significant? Why is that still a loss that matters? And how can we be better in our communication with people about what exactly is happening instead of just making people really confused when they go to the zoo and see white rhinos are still there and black rhinos?
Yeah, definitely. And you can see these guys in zoos pretty often. I want to say, at least in North America, there's maybe like 80 black rhinos that you can find. I'm not sure about white rhino numbers. And most zoos only have a pair of rhinos and maybe their offspring. Since they are so endangered, zoos are trying to get those guys back out into the wild as much as possible. Did you want to clarify on the northern white rhino, their situation?
The last I heard, they only have 2 individuals of the same gender remaining, and one of those may have died recently. I just can't recall. So they're functionally extinct unless they're able to. I mean, no, they're pretty. Yeah,
Oh,
they have to do some like Jurassic Park type stuff to get them back. At this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's only 2 females, I believe, and even so, the black rhinos that do exist in the wild now, the populations are so spread out that it can be really hard for them to, 1, find each other to make babies, or 2, as these populations get more and more spread out, even if they can find each other within that population, then you start running into, inbreeding and, genetic bottlenecks and all this not great stuff. So there is, I believe, also work trying to spread around genes and making sure that we try to preserve habitat between these populations so that they can intermingle as much as possible. And that's true for, conservation of any species. You really have to take, and we talked about this with the parrots, I think, you really have to take an ecosystem-wide approach. You have to not just have these little tiny parks where they're safe, and you have to make sure that they have protections, in the whole country, or maybe, the whole continent, and that we have these habitat corridors where they can move and move between and make sure that the genetic diversity is there so that the populations are not just existing, but are thriving. I have one more extinct animal that I want to talk about, and this one, I kind of want to have a conversation with you. Not that we haven't had a conversation this whole time, but I'm curious about your perspective on this. And I have a lot of feelings, and I try to not let them show through so that I can hear what you think.
Oh, okay.
But, so, did you know the plains zebra, like the zebra that you see all over the place, whenever you see a picture of Africa and it's the savannah and there's a zebra, it's a plains zebra, 100% of the time. They're everywhere. There's so many of them. And these guys naturally have a very wide variety and stripe patterns, to the point where some of them might be like mostly black instead of mostly white. And sometimes they even have spots instead of stripes.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this subspecies of plains zebra that is now extinct, and it was called the Quagga, which is, it's spelled Quagga. And I had to look up how to say this guy. And
Quagga.
The Quagga. The Q is like barely there. Quagga.
Okay.
And technically it's supposed to be the Quagga, like quah, quah, quah. You have to have like growly noise.
Quagga. Yeah.
But that's hard for me to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm white.
Right.
But it's interesting because their name, the Quagga, is an onomatopoeia for the noise they make. So Quagga, Quagga, that zebra noise that zebras make. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And that helped me kind of cement how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. But the Quagga is now extinct. It went extinct. The last one was in the Amsterdam Zoo, and it died in 1883. And they found that these guys, at first they thought that this was a distinct species from the plains zebra. But in 1984, they actually were able to pull DNA from a taxidermied quagga that was being kind of redone. And there's a little bit of flesh on there, and they pulled DNA from that sample of flesh and found that it was actually a subspecies of the plains zebra. Ooh. And not a distinct species as we first thought. And these guys, what is interesting about them is that there's actually a breeding project going on in South Africa. It's called the Quagga Project. You can go to their website, quaggaproject.org. Again, it's Quagga, and kind of learn more about them. And the Quagga Project is breeding plain zebras and, selecting for fewer and fewer stripes on the rump. So the quagga, when it was alive, it had striping on its neck and kind of on its shoulders and on its sides, but had absolutely no stripes on its rump or on its legs. So it was just kind of like a light brownish color, and there was no stripes at all. And the Quagga Project is claiming to bring back the quagga from extinction. So I'm just curious as to your thoughts on that claim.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
This sounds, I mean, I've already referenced Jurassic Park, but it does feel a little bit like that. But it's interesting because it seems like they're basically trying to take the same evolutionary steps, but the driver in this point is, instead of natural selection, just human-induced.
Yeah. Which is how we go from, that's how we get all these different breeds of dogs, and how we get all these different breeds of cats. Like, selective breeding is very, very powerful, but by them doing this breeding, are they really bringing back an extinct animal?
Yeah.
How will we ever really know? And we do have the DNA from an actual quagga. I don't know. I just thought this was a really interesting project.
It is. And, God, okay, sorry, there's so much going on in my head right now. Let me try and, organize it into a few specific things. I got so excited, I had to, sit up on my chair and perch so that I could think properly.
Yes.
So here's my thought. I don't think that they can recreate the quagga. I don't think that they can say they brought it back from extinction. I do think that they can come really close. And I do think that, especially with our DNA technologies being so quick and effective now, and having that DNA sample, I don't know if it's a full genome. Do you know if it's a full genome?
I don't think so.
Yeah. See, that's probably difficult, because if they had an entire genome sequence, they could really analyze and say, how close did we get? But the problem here is that there is more to the evolutionary process than just genetic breeding. It's more than the genes. There's a lot of environmental effects that cause epigenetic changes in these animals that we know are incredibly environmentally influenced. I think some people have been publishing clickbaity titles lately about this kind of stuff, where they'll talk about your genes have memories and it's not the DNA and that kind of stuff. But there is some truth to that, in the sense that, our evolutionary past is much, much deeper than just our genes. And so there's probably features that we cannot detect anymore, that would be impossible for us to detect, that we just won't be able to replicate because we don't know that they existed. And we can't replicate the environmental changes these animals went through that drove their original evolution into this subspecies. So I think that they can create quagga that look the same, and maybe in some ways they will act the same and make similar vocalizations and stuff, but they probably would never be the actual subspecies. And we could never, from a scientific or ecological perspective, we could never study what these animals do if they were, say, set loose in an ecosystem, and assume that they were behaving in a similar way to the extinct animal.
No, yeah, I agree. And if you look up interviews with the people that are running this project, occasionally they will admit that we're only making something that looks like a quagga. But some, on their website, it says, I don't want to quote them incorrectly. Let me just pull it up.
Oh, okay. I actually just Googled the website, and I'm looking at the pictures of these animals. They're very cool. I see what you mean about the brown and the lack of stripes in the rump.
They're very distinct looking, absolutely. And it's interesting to think about, what drove the subspecies of plain zebra to develop these stripes or lack thereof, and the dark patterning on the rump, that really dark brown, whereas a lot of zebras are exactly black and white. And, a lot of these, it wasn't just one or two zebras that looked like this. There were so many of these that we thought they were a different species. Whereas, some of those other examples that I was giving, the really, really dark zebras, or the zebras that kind of have spots instead of stripes, it's like one or two individuals that look like this. So it might be more of just like kind of a weird genetic mutation more than with the quagga. Obviously, there was something pushing these animals to look like this, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. And that's never something that we could replicate artificially.
No. And sometimes the pressures are actually on a different part, like a sort of invisible mm-hmm. part of the animal, and the patterning just happens to go along with it because of the way the genes are affected. Like, I think the most obvious example of this that people can recognize is the red fox breeding projects that have happened, where by mm-hmm. selecting for like quote unquote friendly domestic traits, a lot of the physical characteristics that we recognize in domesticated canids just like happen to follow suit because they happen to be affected in similar ways by that breeding. So, I mean, it could be that it wasn't even selecting for the stripes, that there was something else there, and like we just have no way of knowing that because these animals are gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess then, if you take that logic, if you did select for the patterning, maybe you could bring out some of the other traits. But it's hard to say for sure if you've got the entire picture, if you don't have the entire picture that you're starting from.
Yeah.
I do think, even with like any concerns about like the legitimacy and overinflating the work that's being done, I think it's worth doing the work. Like, I think it's worth doing this experiment and seeing like, hey, are there some traits that come back? And, we can sure make some speculations about that kind of thing, and we can sure look at their genetics and see like, oh, hey, when we selected for these stripes, these are the other genes that got pulled along with it, and here's what we can compare that to and make some speculations on their evolution. But we can never pretend like it's an answer, like a certain answer.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of my biggest gripe with this project, is it's really interesting, and I think especially if they take it like you're saying, and they really like look at the changes in the genome and, what selecting for a different striping pattern did, if they take it that far, then absolutely power to them. But I don't know that they will. And mm-hmm. I hope that they do. But right now it kind of just seems like, I don't want to make enemies, but it kind of just seems like they kind of wanted to do it, so they did it. And it's not that I think that that's necessarily wrong. Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm worried that, oh no, they're playing God or anything like that, or, it's just that perhaps all of the money and the time, maybe this project is kind of detracting attention away from more important conservation work of animals that are already here, like our rhinos. And, there's even subspecies of giraffe that are endangered. But yeah, it's interesting. And they have actually released some of the quagga that they've bred.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, that seems dangerous.
Yeah, that was my
they first. Can just breed. Yeah, they would just breed back into the zebra populations, the regular plain zebra, right? Or am I crazy? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was very scared when I saw that, but it turns out that they are releasing them onto game reserves and onto, fenced areas. Yeah, so they're wild but separate, which is good. I was very concerned that they were just like, let's, take this animal that's been in captivity and selectively bred for, 4 or 5 generations and just throw it out there. 1, they would ruin all their hard work, and 2, you don't want to do that. It would mess with the genetics of the populations that were already there.
We have enough horror stories of mistakes like that, exactly like that, we've already made in the past across the world. Yes. We don't need to do it again. We should have learned by now. Yeah. Oh, this is very interesting. And you're right. I do want to point out, I think that, at least for me personally, I want to be careful implementing too many like what about isms with regards to like what we choose to spend our resources on. And that kind of thing. Well, because, there's different pools of resources and people have different varying abilities to contribute to conservation and stuff. But that's not to negate anything that you said, because I still think it's fair to be like, hey, should we continue pouring resources into this one endangered species, for example, when there are so many others that we could actually save without as much human intervention? And I think those are good conversations to have, and I think that that's totally fair. Just acknowledging that there's sometimes a lot of more complex things that go into those decisions, and that's understandable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm not trying to defend this project, so I know nothing about it, but I'm just saying.
Right, yeah. Please, Quaha Project, don't get mad at me. I'm just voicing opinions. I don't have any control over any money, so don't worry. Yeah. I just have opinions, and I like shouting them into the world, so.
Don't we all?
Yes.
Well, fascinating.
Yeah. I just thought it was a really interesting project, and I kind of went on a rabbit hole with them, and I found some cool videos that I'll definitely post on our blog post for this episode, so check them out if you're interested.
And if you find, well, never mind. I was going to say, if you find resources on protecting any of these species, having literally just forgotten everything is extinct, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, no. Okay. So, that was really loud. I blew out my mic. To get away from the doom and gloom, there is a lot of really, really cool, amazing conservation efforts that are going on in Africa, especially around, those large, charismatic megafauna like elephants. And some of the most successful ones usually involve bringing income to those local communities that are there already. Things like ecotourism is obviously very huge in Africa, and there are many organizations that will funnel that money directly to the people that need it. So if you are going on a vacation to Africa, make sure that you research your travel agency, research your tour guide that's giving you their time, and you're giving them your money, because sometimes those organizations are not so great, and sometimes they are really awesome. So take that time to make sure that your money is going towards a reputable organization, and that's true no matter where you're traveling. One of my absolute favorite stories of really cool conservation work is the story of the elephants and the honeybees. Elephants are big. They're destructive. They will absolutely destroy a farmer's crop field. However, elephants also are terrified of honeybees. So they found that if you kind of circle your crop field with several honeybee hives, the elephants will be too scared to go past the hives to then eat or trample your crops. So now you have a natural deterrent rather than, shooting the animal or scaring it away or, building a fence that then those animals will be blocking their migration routes and all that fun stuff. You just have a row of honeybee hives. And that farmer now has crops that are safe, and he also has a second source of income in the honey that those honeybees are making. So, love it. And the honeybees are helping pollinate their crops as well. So, win all the way around. Something that complicates the conservation of megafauna in particular is this is a really big animal. Yeah. They need a lot of food. They need a lot of room to roam to find that food. And they're slow to mature. So it takes a long time for little giant to turn into big giant that can then have offspring. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of advantages to being giant-sized as well. And that's why, especially, we used to have a lot of megafauna. For herbivores, a giant body means a giant digestive tract to help break down plants, because plants are really hard to break down. If you are giant, you have very few predators. And then if you're a giant carnivore, that means that you can eat a lot of smaller things. So there's advantages to being a megafauna, and there's also disadvantages. And their conservation story is constantly evolving, but there is hope. There's a lot of organizations out there that are doing a lot of really cool work with these guys.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Nicole, for teaching me so much. Thank you to our listeners for listening to our podcast. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please share with a friend and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. It really helps us a lot and it makes us smile. So two great things right there. Give us a follow on Facebook and Twitter, or leave us a voice message or text us. All the links are in the thing that has our description right there next to your podcast app. We'll even give you a shout out for that love. I guess that's it. So we're signing off, and
we'll catch you on the flip side.
We'll catch you on the flip side. And remember, if you're feeling depressed about the state of conservation, then go do something positive for conservation.
Yeah.
Excited to see you guys next week.